least you deserve. Seated in a comfortable armchair in Mrs. Silver's parlour, sipping his tea, Mr. Hoppy was all of a twitter. He looked at the lovely lady sitting opposite him and smiled at her. She smiled right back at him. That smile of hers, so warm and friendly, suddenly gave him the courage he needed, and he said, Mrs. Silver, sorry, please, will you marry me? Why, Mr. Hoppy, she cried, I didn't think you'd ever get round to asking me. Of course I'll marry you. Mr. Hoppy got rid of his teacup, and the two of them stood up and embraced warmly in the middle of the room. It's all due to Alfie, Mrs. Silver said, slightly breathless. Good old Alfie, Mr. Hoppy said. We'll keep him forever. Excuse me. The next afternoon, Mr. Hoppy took all his other tortoises back to the pet shops and said they could have them for nothing. How generous. Then he cleaned up his living room, leaving not a leaf of cabbage nor a trace of tortoise. A few weeks later, Mrs. Silver became Mrs. Hoppy, and the two of them lived very happily ever after. Aww. But wait, there is an epilogue. P.S. I expect you are wondering what happened to little Alfie, the first of them all. Well, he was bought a week later from one of the pet shops by a small girl called Roberta Squibb, and he settled down in Roberta's garden. Every day she fed him lettuce and tomato slices and crispy celery, and in the winters he hibernated in a box of dried leaves in the tool shed. That was a long time ago. Roberta has grown up and is now married and has 2 children of her own. She lives in another house. But Alfie is still with her, still the much-loved family pet, and Roberta reckons that by now he must be about 30 years old. It has taken him all that time to grow to twice the size he was when Mrs. Silver had him. But he made it in the end. The end. This is quite unlike most of Roald Dahl's books, in which children who are powerless or have magical powers triumph over evil adults. This one is a sweet little love story. How different. Well, join me next time on Story Time with Eric Zimmer. Thank you. Have a good night. Take care.